The city of Douala wakes beneath the heavy breath of the equatorial sun. Traffic stirs like restless waves, honking cars weaving impatiently between streets lined with vendors. The scent of roasted plantains mingles with salty air drifting from the Atlantic, wrapping the morning in a haze of hunger, hope, and struggle. Within this city, where towers of concrete shadow tin-roofed homes, countless stories begin and end each day. Stories of ambition and failure, of laughter and grief, of promises kept and broken. But among them lies one tale that lingered beyond whispers. The tale of a hidden love. He was a man sculpted by expectation. A rising entrepreneur with sharp suits pressed like armor and words measured like coins. Born into a family that carried both wealth and tradition, his path was charted before he even took his first breath. To build, to expand, to marry into power, to never falter beneath the eyes of a family who watched his every step. Yet beneath the polish, behind the sharp lines of ambition, he carried a loneliness no achievement could cure. She was a woman of color and fire. An artist whose hands shaped dreams from clay and splashed defiance onto canvas. Her world was not one of riches but of vision, walls cracked by struggle, yet lit by imagination too vast to be contained. To many, she was invisible, her modest roots making her an unlikely companion to power. But she saw beauty where others saw nothing. And in her heart burned a freedom no cage could hold. Their paths crossed not in fate's grand theater but in a modest gallery one humid evening. The air was thick, clinging to skin, making every breath a reminder of Douala's restless pulse. He stood surrounded by admirers, their words polished with flattery, when his eyes wandered. Across the crowded room, her gaze met his. The moment froze. The laughter dulled, the voices blurred, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between them. She, with her paint-stained fingers and unshaken stance. He, with his tailored exterior cracked just enough to reveal curiosity. It lasted only a breath, yet it was enough to etch itself onto both their souls. At first, it was subtle. A casual greeting. A conversation about art, ambition, and the stubborn resilience of the city they both called home. Their words carried no promises, yet their silences brimmed with possibility. He admired her refusal to bend, her courage to create despite being overlooked. She admired his restless hunger to be more than the name he carried. Days turned into weeks, and their encounters multiplied like fate conspiring behind curtains. A chance meeting at a market. An unplanned coffee in a tucked-away corner of Bonapriso. A lingering handshake, a smile too long to dismiss. But love, true love, does not ask permission. It grows where it is forbidden. It thrives where it should wither. Their meetings became secret. Hidden behind the noise of the city, concealed in shadows where eyes could not follow. To the world, they were acquaintances. To themselves, they were everything. In crowded streets, they walked side by side yet apart, hands brushing by accident, eyes catching in quick flashes. At night, under the dim lamps of narrow alleys, they found refuge in whispered laughter, shared drinks, and stolen touches. The rains of Douala came heavy and unrelenting, as though the sky itself tried to drown the city in its sorrows. On such nights, they pressed close, confessing fears through the rhythm of thunder. She feared his family's disapproval, the war's tradition would raise between them. He swore love was stronger, that no empire of wealth or pride could tear down what they built together. But even promises whispered under storms are fragile. For in a city where walls have ears and streets breed gossip, secrets never stay buried. His family, pillars of influence and guardians of reputation, soon heard whispers. They tightened their grip, urging him toward alliances that would secure power, demanding he marry into wealth to expand their name. To them, she was not a woman but a threat, a distraction pulling him from duty. Her friends, too, began to notice. They questioned her smiles that flickered with unease, her absences explained too quickly. Some warned her to let go before the fall broke her spirit. But her heart betrayed her. For in his eyes she saw not only a man but the reflection of the woman she longed to become, bold, seen, alive. The weight grew heavier. Arguments sparked like flint. She accused him of living two lives, one crafted for the world, the other hidden in shadows. He begged for patience, swearing that freedom lay just beyond their grasp, that together they could build a new future. Yet the tension between hope and despair never eased. It pressed on them like Douala's humidity, suffocating, relentless. One evening, beneath the city's fading orange glow, they stood on the rooftop of her modest apartment. The skyline stretched restless before them, neon lights flickering against gathering clouds. She told him she could not remain in hiding forever, that love deserved light. His silence weighed heavier than thunder. For days after, distance spread between them. He drowned himself in boardrooms and meetings, while she poured her longing into canvases stained with blues and grays. Each lived as though half alive, tethered by memory but pulled apart by fear. But love is stubborn. It does not vanish at command. One night, with rain streaming down Douala streets, he appeared at her door. Drenched, breathless, trembling with desperation, he confessed he could not exist without her, that the life mapped for him was no life at all. She wept into his chest, torn between joy and terror, knowing promises are sweet yet fragile against the world's bitterness. From that night, their love grew bolder. Less whispered, more lived. They dared laughter in public, dared touch in daylight, dared walk hand in hand despite lingering stares. Some disapproved, some gossiped. Yet others, quietly, admired their courage. Still, the storm was not over. His family's fury only grew. They drew a line sharp as a blade: choose us, or lose everything. And so, he stood before the greatest trial of his heart. The weight of generations against the fire of one love. The city did not sleep. Even as the rains passed and the heat returned, whispers filled its streets. Whispers of a man who carried the weight of a family's pride. Whispers of a woman who dared to love beyond her place. Their story was no longer only theirs. It was spreading, like ripples across the restless waters of the Wuri River. His family's patience wore thin. Their voices sharpened at the dinner table, their warnings no longer veiled. You are a son of legacy, they told him. Your choices are not yours alone. You carry generations, and one mistake can undo all we have built. He listened, stone-faced, but inside his chest, storms raged. Tradition bound him with chains he could not see yet always felt. Duty pressed like a hand against his throat. To bend was survival. To resist was betrayal. And still her face burned in his memory. Her laughter haunted him like music he could not forget. He told himself he could let go, that time would bury what they shared. But when night fell and silence returned, he knew the truth: he was already hers, completely and irreversibly. For her, the burden was no lighter. Friends who once smiled now whispered doubts. Some turned their backs, unwilling to stand beside scandal. Others, softer in their concern, urged her to leave before heartbreak consumed her. She painted through the nights, her canvases heavy with longing. In the blur of colors, she captured him again and again, his eyes, his hands, his presence she could not erase. Still, she wrestled with fear. She asked herself if love was enough to withstand the tide of judgment, the walls of tradition. Could passion stand against power? Could whispers outlast thunder? Their meetings became rarer, each one heavy with the knowledge that every moment might be their last. A hand lingered longer. A kiss held more tightly. Laughter sounded almost like farewell. Then came the night of confrontation. His family gathered in the grand hall of their estate, voices echoing off marble floors polished by wealth and history. He stood before them, his jaw tight, his fist clenched at his sides. You will end this, they commanded. You will choose a woman worthy of our name. Not one who drags you into disgrace. Not one who has nothing to offer but dreams. Their words struck like stones, but he did not flinch. Inside, however, he felt himself fracture. To defy them was to step into exile. To obey them was to shatter his own soul. Meanwhile, she sat alone in her small apartment, rain tracing patterns on her window. She knew the decision was being made that very night. Her chest tightened with each passing hour. She braced herself for silence, for abandonment, for the pain she feared would arrive like dawn. But instead, she heard a knock. A quiet, desperate knock that carried the weight of defiance. When she opened the door, he stood drenched, breathless, trembling. His eyes no longer carried hesitation. They carried resolve. "I cannot lose you," he whispered. "Not for them. Not for legacy. Not for anything." Her tears fell, both relief and fear tangled together. She pressed her forehead to his and whispered back, "Then we will face the storm together." From that moment, they no longer hid. They walked through Douala hand in hand. Markets paused to stare. Cafes buzzed with talk. Some condemned them. Some admired them. Many whispered, but they did not stop. Every step was defiance. Every smile was resistance. Every kiss was a revolution. His family erupted in fury. They threatened to cut him off, to strip him of inheritance, to cast him aside as though he had never been theirs. And for the first time in his life, he did not bend. "I would rather be poor with her," he said, "than rich without her." The words burned bridges that could never be rebuilt. Yet they also lit a path forward, a path only they could walk. Her courage matched his. She stood before neighbors who questioned her worth, before friends who doubted, before strangers who whispered too loudly. She lifted her chin and declared with her presence that love was never shame. They faced trials, yes. The city did not become kinder overnight. Families did not forget. But Douala, restless and alive, began to see them differently. Not as scandal, but as possibility. Not as shame, but as proof. For in their story, others saw reflections of their own hidden loves. Lovers torn by class, by tribe, by tradition, by expectation. Many had chosen silence. Few had chosen defiance. And slowly, their hidden love became something greater. A symbol. A legend whispered not in scorn but in quiet admiration. Time passed. The storms they feared became less fierce. The glare softened. Some who once opposed them began to see that love had not weakened them, it had strengthened them. He built his path, not with the fortune denied him, but with the courage she inspired. She painted her greatest works, no longer haunted by secrecy, but fueled by truth. Together, they carved a life, fragile yet enduring, imperfect yet beautiful. And so, in the heart of Douala, amid traffic that never stops, rains that never rest, and a city that holds both cruelty and hope, their story remained. It was not just love. It was defiance. It was survival. It was proof that even in shadows, love can burn bright enough to light an entire city. This was their hidden love in Douala. The summons arrived the way storms begin, a pressure in the air, a message carried on faces before words. A driver delivered the envelope in the afternoon heat, its paper thick, its seal old enough to smell like history. Inside was a simple card: dinner, family house, 7. No names, because names were unnecessary. When legacy calls, it does not introduce itself. He held the card as if it might burn through his fingers. Outside, Douala kept moving, taxis shouting for passengers, market women bargaining with voices that could split the day open, children racing a plastic wheel with a stick. But inside him, a quiet fell. He folded the card, placed it in his pocket, and whispered to the empty room, "It's time." She listened as he told her, seated on the paint-splattered stool in her studio. The ceiling fan clacked like an old clock marking brave seconds. They did not speak of doom. They spoke of simple things: water for the flowers on the window, whether the rain would hold, how the light in the room turned every color generous near evening. But in the quiet between these small mercies, courage gathered itself like a cloak. "Whatever they say," she murmured, "remember who you are when you are with me." He nodded, and the nod felt like a vow. The family house sat on a hill that remembered every triumph its walls had witnessed. Tiles shone, hedges were obedient, the gate swung with the confidence of old money. He entered a hall that smelled of polished wood and decisions. Portraits watched from the walls, stern men and luminous women who had never asked permission to take up space. A servant relieved him of his jacket, and the gesture felt like being disarmed. Dinner was quiet in the loud way that means sound is coming. Silverware clicked like small threads. Conversation was weather and philanthropy, a litany of neutral topics preparing a runway for what mattered. At last, an uncle leaned back and folded his hands the way judges do in films. "Family," he said, though he looked only at him, "we are hearing stories." Aunties adjusted bracelets, cousins watched with eyes that wanted to be mirrors. "Stories," the uncle continued, "that our son is distracted." A cousin's smile carried vinegar. Another uncle spoke of alliances, of opportunities with families whose names opened doors like skeleton keys. A matriarch cleared her throat, and the room obeyed. "We do not forbid love," she said, voice smooth as a blade. "But we also do not forget who we are. There are unions that strengthen a house, and unions that drain it." She placed a hand on the table, and even the table understood. He listened, breathing evenly, the way one breathes through pain. He spoke without apology. "I have found someone honest," he said. "Her courage helps me see my own. She is not a rumor. She is a person I love." The word love fluttered across the china and landed like a moth near a flame. Some lowered their eyes. Some did not. The matriarch's gaze did not waver. "Then choose," she said quietly. "Love without the house. Or the house without the distraction. You cannot serve two altars." The air thinned. Somewhere a generator coughed. He felt his heart pick up the rhythm of distant thunder. "I won't be bought by fear," he answered, surprising even himself with the softness of his tone. "If I have to choose, I would choose the life that lets me tell the truth." No one argued. Argument is sometimes beneath certain rooms. Instead, signatures were spoken into the air, accounts adjusted, inheritances reconsidered, invitations rescinded before they were even sent. He realized then that exile can sound like administration. When he stepped outside, night had gathered like velvet on the trees. Rain waited somewhere beyond the horizon, patient and inevitable. He checked his phone and found her message, "I left the studio light on. If you need a harbor." He walked. He needed to move through the city the way truth moves through veins, not fast, but unstoppable. The studio light felt like a blessing when he reached it. She did not ask what had been said. She poured water. They sat on the floor, backs against the wall, knees touching like two commas making one sentence. After a while, he told her everything. He did not hide the cost. He did not dramatize it either. He held out his hands as if offering a wound for cleaning. She took those hands and kissed the places where rings of power might have been. "Then we begin," she said. Beginning, it turned out, was work. There were calls he did not return. There were invitations he declined. There were meetings where chairs seemed to shift slightly away from him, the way chairs move from drafts. He found out which friendships had spines. He found out which ones were only reflections in still water. She faced her own weather. A curator who had once smiled like a partner now spoke of market fit. Neighbors grew generous with advice about how decency behaves. A friend asked if she was sure love wasn't just hunger wearing perfume. She answered with a smile that ended the conversation without ending the friendship. At night, she painted skies. The kind that hold lightning without apology. They learned new economies, how to stretch joy, how to save strength. They met in places where air was cheap and laughter was expensive. Street-side grills, plastic chairs near the river, a churchyard after evening service when the world smelled of rain and hymnals. They made a home out of moments. But courage is not a line one crosses and forgets. It is a bridge one walks every day, even when the water below looks greedy. So the test kept coming. A business partner requested a meeting to clarify optics. The office air tasted of metal. "We like you," the partner said, "and we admire your conviction, truly. But certain stakeholders prefer stability. An engagement to someone suitable would reassure many." He felt the old cage rise from the floor like a stage set. He stood, thanked the partner for his concern, and left before the word suitable could stain the furniture. He walked for an hour, then another, past the scent of diesel and dough, past billboards that promised ease for a price. When he finally reached the studio, he did not knock. He slipped in and lay on the floor under a canvas half finished, staring at a sky she had captured mid-breath. She joined him on the floor, said nothing, and let silence be an instrument they both knew how to play. "Tell me something true," she whispered at last. "I thought I needed their approval," he said. "But I only needed a mirror that doesn't lie." She touched his cheek. "Then see." The next weeks brought a kind of grace that feels like hard-won sunlight. A small gallery owner from Bonaberi visited her studio and stopped before crossing as if the painting had asked her to wait. She offered a show, not grand, not loud, but honest. They prepared together, stretching canvases, cataloging titles, writing prices that felt like hope rather than apology. He built the website in evenings, a simple page where her work could breathe. He wrote her biography as if he were telling a legend to care for children. She believes color is a kind of truth. She believes cities can be healed with attention. On opening night, the gallery smelled of new paint and mango perfume. Friends came, and strangers, and skeptics who pretend to be friends. Someone bought a small piece, a woman with a basket, laughing on a rainy day, and the receipt felt like vindication. He stood near the door, not as a guard, but as a lighthouse. When the matriarch's sister entered, unannounced, immaculate, the room seemed to pause. She walked slowly, eyes skipping nothing, until she reached crossing. There she stopped. For a long moment she said nothing, and silence became an arena. At last she turned to the artist and asked softly, "How did you know what the bridge feels?" The artist answered, "Because I walk it." The aunt nodded once, a gesture that might have been respect, or merely acknowledgement that courage had good posture. She left without buying, but also without taking anything away. After the crowd thinned, they locked the door and danced among the paintings with the shyness of those who have earned their joy. They danced to nothing, the kind of nothing that is actually everything: breath, heartbeat, the soft squeak of shoes on the floor that had not always been theirs. Outside, rain began again, curtain-like and steady. They opened the door and let the cool enter. The city, too, seemed to inhale. But victories are seldom unobserved. News of the show, and of the buyers it attracted, reached tables where names are weighed. He received a message from a cousin asking to meet for coffee and family. Coffee arrived with 2 other cousins and a friend whose smile never touched his eyes. They congratulated him on the artist's little success. They suggested a compromise: keep seeing her quietly, but please, for the sake of contract and come, announce an engagement to the daughter of a partner for at least a year. "A year is not forever," one cousin said kindly, as if kindness were a glove one could borrow. He laughed then, not cruelly, but with the relief of a man who finally recognizes a trap by its smell. "I will not practice counterfeit," he said. "And I will not ask a good woman to be my shadow." They left with offended politeness, which is to say they left angry. The backlash arrived the next week, subtle, efficient. 2 deals that had been certain became complicated. A potential lender found reasons to delay that sounded like weather forecasts. A client moved the project to another firm with a reassuring note about future possibilities that would never materialize. He tightened budgets, caught flourish from his days, and learned again how to build with fewer bricks. She watched him work late by the studio window, laptop light turning his face into a pale moon. She wanted to ease him, to lift weight with words, but some burdens must be held, not solved. So she brewed tea and sat beside him, marking invoices and painting titles on labels with her small careful hand. Together, they discover that love is not merely spark, it is also administration. One morning, a letter arrived addressed to her. It bore the crest of a cultural foundation from Yaoundé, inviting her to apply for a residency abroad, 3 months in a European city that spoke the language of galleries fluently. Her hands trembled. She had dreamed of such doors, but dreams look different when they open in the middle of a life you are still learning how to live. She showed him the letter, eyes bright, mouth uncertain. "You must go," he said at once, "because love that is not freedom is theater." She searched his face for a wound and found only pride. 3 months is not forever, she whispered, and the words felt dangerous and beautiful at the same time. They made plans. Applications, portfolios, letters of intent drafted at midnight. They practiced goodbye the way one practices a difficult song, not to perfect it, but to keep from breaking on the first note. He promised to visit if work allowed. She promised to send recordings of the city so he could hear the way foreign streets pronounce courage. But the day before she submitted the application, the foundation posted a polite update. Due to community considerations, applicants were expected to embody a harmonious social alignment. The phrase did not define itself, because phrases like that prefer fog. A friend texted gently, "They mean scandal-free." She sat very still for a long time. Then she closed her laptop and went to the window. Rain had begun again, a soft rinsing rain that makes colors kinder. He arrived minutes later, having seen the same post, carrying her favorite bread and a look that could founder a ship. "I will not be the reason you shrink," he said. "And I will not be the reason you leave a door closed." She leaned her forehead against his. "Then we will knock on other doors," she said. They did. Local doors, small doors, doors that opened onto rooms with bare bulbs and sincere walls. Her second show sold 3 pieces. A blogger wrote a paragraph that sounded like a blessing disguised as a review. A school asked if she would speak to students about seeing the world before drawing it. She went, carrying a box of charcoal sticks and a heart braver than last month's. He waited outside with bottled water and the patience of a man who knows greatness has its own schedule. Still, shadows persisted. His family sent messages that pretended to be concern, invitations to gatherings where you can correct misunderstandings, introductions that would be wise to make. He declined with words as polite as gates. Then one evening, the matriarch herself called. Her voice carried the season of his childhood, the smell of talcum powder, the hum of old fans, the strict kindness that had shaped him. "Come," she said. "Just you. Let us talk like people who love the same history." He went, because history is a language you cannot forget. They sat on a veranda where bougainvillea made a frame for the dusk. She poured tea into cups that had survived more storms than either of them. "For your father's sake," she began, "I wanted to be angry longer. But I am tired of anger. And you are not a boy." He waited. She looked at him the way surgeons look at bone, not cruelly, but without romance. "You love this girl?" "Yes." "Does she love you in a way that strengthens the ground you walk on?" "Yes." "Then you will need to be twice as steady. Because the city enjoys a spectacle, but it does not feed the performers when the show is over." She touched his hand with fingers that had never trembled in public. "Strengthen your work," she said. "Let no one say you threw away inheritance for romance. Let them say you built a new house from your own bricks." He exhaled a breath he had been saving for years. "Will you ever accept her?" he asked, a child's question dressed in a man's voice. The matriarch stared into the garden where geckos practiced stillness. "I accept what does not weaken us," she said. "Show me." He left with no guarantees, which is to say he left with a map that required walking. At the studio, he found her asleep in a chair, paint smudged on her wrist like a bracelet the day had given her. He covered her with a cloth and watched her breathe, and for the first time in weeks, the future did not feel like a courtroom. They began to build with new ferocity. He streamlined his business, letting go of clients who treated respect as optional. He pitched to smaller firms that valued outcomes more than optics. He mentored 2 young analysts because generosity is a kind of architecture. She taught Saturdays at the community center, hands flying as she showed children how to make a horizon sing. They saved money with the devotion of pilgrims. They took joy in modest victories that would embarrass people who never had to count blessings. One afternoon, while she packed for a workshop, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of them walking by the river, fingers intertwined, captioned with a smirking question mark. Minutes later, another message arrived, a polite inquiry from a gossip page asking for comment to balance the narrative. Her stomach folded. He read over her shoulder, jaw tightening. They chose not to respond. Silence, sometimes, is not surrender but strategy. The story ran anyway, as such stories do, suggestive, careful, profitable. For 2 days, the phone behaved like a bell. Then the city found a new distraction, and the sound faded. They survived. On the 3rd morning after the gossip fled and dimmed, the rain finally stopped. The air felt laundered. Sunlight climbed the walls, tasting everything. She opened the studio windows and let the clean in. He brewed coffee and read a contract that did not insult him. They looked at each other with the quiet giddiness of sailors who have learned how to listen to waves. "Come," she said, "I want to show you something." They walked to a rooftop they had no right to, climbed 2 flights past a sleeping dog, and stepped into a wind that carried the city's whole voice. From there, temples and cranes and schoolyards made a single grammar. The river flashed like a thought on the verge of becoming a song. She pointed to the horizon. "I used to think love would save me," she said. "Now I think love invites me to save myself and then share the view." He laughed softly. "Then we will share big views." They stood a long time, not counting minutes. Below, a boy flew a kite that refused to obey, and his father taught him the beautiful stubbornness of patience. A woman watered plants in tin cans. A motorcycle stalled, swore, forgave itself, and moved on. The city practiced being a city, and they practiced being brave inside it. Evening approached with the color of forgiveness. They returned to the studio, where a new canvas waited like an unclaimed hour. She mixed paint the way alchemists once prayed. He stretched linen, hand steady, and thought of the matriarch's challenge. Build a new house from your own bricks. He did not know yet what the blueprint would be. But he knew who would live there. Night found them walking side by side, shoulders almost touching, each focused on a task that would make tomorrow less afraid. Outside, distant thunder muttered like a relative who cannot help himself. Inside, the lights hummed their small hymn. She looked up and caught him looking at her as if she were a landmark on a map he could finally read. "What?" she asked, smiling. "Nothing," he said. "Everything. This is the middle of beginnings. The part where storms teach rather than terrorize. Where families do not approve so much as watch, waiting to see how long bravery can keep its balance. It is the part where love learns to be a verb with calluses. And tomorrow, as every tomorrow here, will test the sturdiness of their yes. For now, Douala sleeps in patches. Generators quit one by one like stubborn crickets. The river turns in its sleep. Somewhere, a matriarch sits at her window and thinks of bridges. Somewhere, a cousin rehearses a story that will make him the hero of his own version. Somewhere, 2 people who have chosen the difficult road close their eyes and dream of a house with many windows. Not a house of inheritance. A house of light. And if the sky gathers itself again, if rain sharpens its knives, they will do what they have done all along. They will turn toward each other. They will stand. They will begin again. Morning arrives wearing gold, as if the sun has chosen forgiveness for its outfit. Douala stretches, shakes the last dream from its shoulders, and begins to hum. Taxis negotiate with destiny. Vendors stack hope into pyramids of mango and peppers. From the river, a breeze wanders through the city like a rumor that wants to become a hymn. He wakes before the alarm and listens to the quiet that comes only after long noise. Messages blink on his phone, invoices answered, new inquiries, a brief update from the hospital, stable, improving. He closes his eyes, lets gratitude settle into his bones, and then rises with the caution of a man who does not want to frighten Grace away. She is already at the studio, windows open to the soft clatter of money. On the easel, a large canvas waits, the sky mapped in patient layers, the city's spine sketched in charcoal, the river drawn as a sentence that refuses a period. She stands with a brush poised over possibility. Today, she will paint the ending. They meet at a stall where the owner seasons beans like prayer. Breakfast is quiet, complete, puff puff, pap, the shock of sweet orange, a shared silence that says, we are still here. He tells her the matriarch has called. Lunch, he says, no agenda. They smile at the lie of no agenda, but they do not fear it. Back at the studio, she adds light to the river. Not a glare, but a path. He reworks a proposal, subtracting every sentence that smells of apology. Outside, the city warms to its chorus. At noon, he walks up the familiar hill. The family house shows its good side, hedges obedient, tiles rehearsed, a gate that opens with the memory of victories. He enters through rooms that have judged him kindly and cruelly, and finds the matriarch on the veranda, the day arranging itself politely around her. She pours tea. No speeches. No lawyers hiding in the curtains. Only a table, 2 cups, and the sound of bougainvillea gossiping with the wind. You are stubborn, she says, and he almost smiles. Stubbornness has kept this family standing in good seasons and bad. If you will use yours to build, I will not waste mine trying to break you. He does not trust the air yet. She continues, I steady. I watched the television segment, she says. She spoke well. She did not shout. She did not pretend. These are signs of a person who can hold a house without shaking it. He exhales the breath he has held since childhood. What do you need from me? He asks, not as a surrender, but as a plan. Evidence, the matriarch says gently. Not that you love is loud. Evidence that you can be steady in a storm. Bring your work into a season where it does not depend on our umbrella. Let people say, he chose a difficult road and still built a road for others to walk. He nods. I am already building, he says. Then build visibly, she replies. And bring her to dinner next week. No tests. Only soup. He lives lighter, but not lightheaded. On the way down the hill, he texts her one word, soup. Her reply arrives at once, brushes down at 6. Tell me everything. The day unfolds with small confirmations. The logistics firm signs month 2. A community center confirms her Saturday class with a stipend that respects the work. At the hospital, his father complains about the tea again, a sign as reliable as sunrise. Evening gathers like a kind aunt. On the studio roof, they eat rice and grilled fish and drink from bottles with labels that have survived many rains. He tells her everything, the tea, the words, the request for evidence. She listens as if his voice is the map and she is the road. Then we will be visible, she says. Not loud. Clear. Clear becomes their practice. He writes a public note to clients and partners, not a manifesto, just a paragraph. We build slowly, honestly, together. If you work with us, expect transparency and results. If you need optics, there are many mirrors for sale elsewhere. She posts the date of her next small show with a photograph of her hands and the caption, work that hopes to be useful to the city that raised it. The city notices, as cities do. Some reply with approval. Some reply with silence, which is its own kind of weather. But nothing collapses. The ground holds. Days braid into a rope they can climb. He trains 2 young analysts who remind him that generosity multiplies. She mentors a teenager whose sketchbook carries a future in graphite. They budget. They rest. They argue and return. They practice the arithmetic of a shared life. Then comes the week of soup. They dress not to impress but to respect. The family dining room looks less like a courtroom than memory had painted it. The matriarch greets her with a nod that is almost a bow. No test, indeed. Only soup, pepper hot enough to remind the tongue it is alive. Conversation is human. She asks the matriarch about the bougainvillea. The matriarch confesses she talks to it when no one is looking. He reports on month 2, and uncle says, "Send the invoice date. I like to witness punctuality." Someone mentions the television segment, and aunt says, "Your voice was calm." Calm is a difficult art. After dessert, the matriarch invites her to the veranda. They look out across a city that neither of them owns and both of them claim. "I do not retract my warnings," the matriarch says. "People tire of clapping. But I have eyes. I see that you carry your own weight." Carry his only when he is too tired to remember he can. The artist nods. "Thank you for not pretending it will be easy," she says. Weeks pass, then months. News cycles lose interest in steady people. The business survives the lean stretch, and then, as though the river has decided to be generous, work begins to flow. Not torrents. Streams that respect the banks. Her show opens on a Friday that smells like distant rain. Children from her class arrive in their best shoes. He stands by the door again, not as guard or lighthouse now, but as a person in the right place. The matriarch arrives unannounced, as is her custom, and stops once more at crossing. But she does not ask a question this time. She simply says, "The light has learned something since I last saw it." The artist replies, "So have we." A buyer purchases eavesdrop. A teacher buys a small print and says she will hang it in a classroom. A reporter asks 3 questions that do not feel like traps. When the gallery empties, they do not dance, they sit on the floor and lean against each other and let the simple miracle of enoughness wash their faces. That night, power cuts, mischievous and familiar. They light candles in small cups. On the table between them, 2 objects rest, the matriarch's invitation to Sunday lunch renewed whenever, and a folded paper with numbers that promise rent and rest for the next 6 months. They laugh, not out of triumph, but out of recognition. This is what survival looks like when it remembers to be tender. He reaches into his pocket and places something on the table. Not a ring, not yet. A key. "It is small," he says, "and the roof has opinions when it rains. But it has 2 windows that argue with morning in a way you will like. If you wish, we can let our brushes and spreadsheets share a kitchen." She looks at the key as if it is a star that has come down to sit with them. "Let's build," she says. Slowly. Like people who trust time. They move on a Sunday when the sky is undecided. Friends carry boxes, laughter, and advice. Someone brings a plant that will survive even their busiest weeks. They place the plant by a window, it nods like a drummer keeping time. The first night in the new place, they eat on the floor from plates that pretend to be bowls. They list what they don't have yet: shelves, a better lamp, money for a sturdier table, and discover the list is shorter than their gratitude. From the street below, a boy sings the chorus of a song he does not yet know the verses to. They join him on the chorus, quietly. Days become a disciplined joy. Mornings are for work that feeds tomorrow. Afternoons are for errands, for teaching, for clients who have learned to ask for results instead of theater. Evenings are for the balcony where the city's lights stitch themselves into a patient net. The cousin tries once more, a message about a final opportunity with a partner's daughter, purely strategic. He replies with 2 words, "No vacancy." There is no reply. One Saturday, the community center hosts a small fair. Her students hang their drawings from a line like laundry in a generous neighborhood. Parents point with pride that will carry these children farther than taxis ever could. He mounts the lemonade table with the seriousness of a banker and the smile of a man who knows he is exactly where he should be. The matriarch arrives, this time with his father, thinner but upright, leaning on a cane that looks like it might forgive the years if asked nicely. They walk the line of drawings. At one, the father stops, a bridge at dawn, a figure mid-span, the city and sea in conversation. He reads the title aloud, Crossing. Then, without turning, he says, I crossed many things badly. Cross this well. He squeezes his son's shoulder with a hand that remembers strength. Evenings grow softer. The plant beside the window prospers. Bills arrive and are answered. They argue about small things and repair quickly, because repair is a daily practice in a city that rebuilds itself every sunrise. On a night that feels like a page turning, he brings out a ring, simple, honest, as if metal could keep a promise. He doesn't kneel, he stands in front of her the way a person stands when they are already chosen. Marry me, he says, not because the city has grown kinder, not because the family has grown softer, but because we have grown steadier. Let us make a house whose roof sings when it rains. She laughs and cries in the same breath, which is the correct grammar for joy. Yes, she says, which is the word that built the world. They tell no one that night. They keep the yes between them like a candle shielding itself with its own hand. In the morning, they tell everyone who needs to know. Some celebrate loudly. Some send messages that say congratulations but mean I am watching. The matriarch sends flowers that arrive in a vase older than either of them. Attached is a note, evidence received. Proceed. The wedding is not a spectacle. It is a courtyard with shade, a choir that learned the song yesterday and sings it as if they were there when it was written, two families discovering that tradition is a river with room for several boats. Friends hold phones, children hold petals, old aunties hold back tears and fail. When they speak their vows, the sky does not interrupt. It listens. They build the life they promised, slow, attentive, imperfect, beautiful. Some months are lean, some are generous. They keep a jar where they drop notes about small victories. On difficult days, they read the notes aloud, the student who sold her first drawing. The contract paid early. The matriarch laughed at a joke that wasn't even good. Years will come, and with them, new tests, because love is not a fortress, it is a garden. But this story, the one you have followed through rain and rumor, needs its ending now. Not an ending that closes a door. An ending that leaves a light on. So picture them on the balcony of the small home whose roof has finally learned to respect storms. The city below is doing what cities do, failing and trying and singing anyway. The river is telling its one story in 10,000 dialects. Inside, on the table, a new canvas is drying, and beside it, a spreadsheet that adds up to enough. They lean shoulder to shoulder, not needing to speak, because this is what they meant when they said yes. To stand. To build. To begin again whenever beginning is required. This is not just love. It is defiance that learned tenderness. It is survival that learned to sing. It is proof that in a city where secrets travel quickly, truth travels farther when carried by two. And if you pass them one day, in a market, by the river, under a sky rehearsing rain, you may not notice anything unusual. Two people buying peppers. Two people arguing softly about a frame size. Two people laughing at a joke the world forgot to tell. But if you listen closely, you will hear it, the quiet, fearless music of a promise kept. This was their hidden love in Douala. And it did not stay hidden. It learned to live in the light.